Hi there everyone. In this bite-sized bit, we're going to explore the coding interface and create our very first program where we collect input, process that input, and then output our results to the user. We're also going to explore the proper naming of our variables. Let's go ahead and get started. In a previous video, we created a very simple form with a label, a text box, and a button. And we added the beginnings of our code for our submit button. Many novice programmers like to get to the code behind the scenes by double-clicking on that control. And while double-clicking creates the method for a specific object, it's not the preferred way of getting to the code behind the scenes. I'm going to recommend to new programmers that they get in the habit of taking advantage of the View Code button in the Solution Explorer. Make sure you're highlighting the form that you're interested in the Solution Explorer, and then click on what looks like the less than, greater than button in the Solution Explorer to get to your existing code. We created this method, which is linked to a trigger event in our program. When the user clicks on the submit button, this method is going to run. We're now going to write some code for what happens when the user clicks on submit. In all of our programs, we're going to take advantage of the input, processing, output structure. So the first thing you're going to see me demonstrate today is the use of comments. I'm typing 2 forward slashes, and as soon as I do so, you see that they turn green, and I'm going to type the word input and hit enter. Code that is in green is comment. It is not actual code that's going to run. It's there for the programmer or for other programmers to read to try to better understand what the functional code is trying to accomplish. In this particular case, I'm typing input because I'm about to write code to collect input from our form and store it in a variable. This next line of code is going to declare our very first variable. I'm going to type the word string, I'm going to type space, and then I'm going to type str, capital S student, capital N name. You'll notice a couple things while I'm typing. First, you will often see a red squiggly during the typing process. This is Visual Studio checking your code for syntax errors dynamically. And while you're typing code, of course, you haven't completed that specific line of code, so there's probably a syntax error. You don't need to worry about red squigglies while you're typing code, but you certainly want to pay attention to them once you think you're finished. You'll also notice things like green squigglies. Green squigglies indicates a variable that you've created but not used in your code. I just created this variable name, so I haven't had an opportunity to actually use it. You'll also sometimes see prompts that will help you finish typing your code. So I'm going to finish typing this line of code, and I'm going to try to describe what those prompts look like. This is called Intellisense. I'm creating a variable name called strStudentName, and I'm going to set it equal to tx. And I was about to type txt student name, but you can see that txt student name has already shown up on my screen. It's the only object in my code that starts with tx. So Intellisense is prompting me and suggesting that this is what I mean to type. And I do. So rather than continuing to type on my keyboard, I'm going to hit the tab key on my keyboard, and that's going to fill in the remaining suggestion. Pretty cool. I'm going to type a period on my keyboard, and then I'm going to type capital T, and you can see the word text is highlighted, and I'm going to hit the tab key on my keyboard, and then I'm going to type a semicolon to tell Visual Studio C# that I'm done with this line of code. I created a new variable name called strStudentName. The type of variable that this is a string variable, and string is synonymous with text. A string variable can contain upper and lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, spaces, other punctuation, really anything. And in this case, that's perfect because we're going to collect a student name from the form and store it in this string variable. For the appropriate names for our variables, we need to refer to our coding standards. If you look at the coding standards document, which is available on eCampus, you'll find a list of all of the various data types that we might be using. And we always want to use the right data type, which is for another discussion. But in this particular case, we're using string, so we're using str. The most common prefixes for this class will be int for integer, dbl for double, dec for decimal, and bln or bool for boolean. And of course, the one we're using today, str for string. The second half of this line of code says equals txtstudentname.text. We're going to go and get a property from a control object on our form. The control object is txtstudentname, and the property we're interested in is .text. What we're going to do here is we're going to get the information from the .text property, and we're going to store it in our code in a variable of our naming convention, in this case, strstudentname. That's our input. I'm going to hit enter a couple times and type processing. For our processing, I'm going to create a second string variable, strMessage. And I'm going to create a message that says the student's name is space, and you'll see that I already have the end quotes. I'm going to use the arrow key to get past them. I'm going to type a plus sign, and then I'm going to type str student name. Now you'll notice I only typed str and capital S, and now I'm using the tab key to finish the variable name. And then I'm going to type a plus, and then I'm going to type quotes, and I'm going to add a period, and then I'm going to use the right arrow, and I'm going to type semicolon. What you can probably glean is that I'm creating a sentence where I am adding a phrase of my own, I'm adding the information inside the variable name, and then I'm adding some punctuation. For some of my quicker students, you might be thinking that instead of typing str student name, I could type txtstudentname.text in this space. And you're absolutely right, I certainly could do that. But we're going to try to follow a common mantra throughout the semester where we collect information from the form and bring it into our user-defined variables. Then we manipulate that information in our code, and then we output back to our form. We want to separate input and processing and output from the form controls. So I am using a user-defined variable to collect information from my text box. Then I'm manipulating that information, and then I'm going to display our output. That's it for processing. I'm going to hit enter a couple times and add a comment that says output. And in this case, I'm going to quickly type some code. You can follow along with me. I'm typing message, M-E-S, and you'll see I see the word message show up, but what I'm actually interested in is message box. So I'm going to hit the down arrow on my keyboard to highlight that choice, and then hit the tab key. I'm typing a period. I could either start typing the word show, or I could use the arrow keys. I'm going to type capital S and hit the tab key. I'm going to type an open parenthesis, and then inside the parentheses, I'm going to type str message. So I'm going to type a capital M and use Intellisense to finish that, hitting the tab key. And then I'm going to go ahead and click the semicolon. This is going to pop a message box on our screen, which contains the message we want to display to the user. Again, this is not particularly exciting code. We're certainly going to get to much more sophisticated code soon. Let's go ahead and save our work. And then let's test this code by clicking on the Start button. After a few seconds, you should see your form show up on your screen. I'm going to type a student name, and I'm going to click on the Submit button on my form. And here we have our message box that says the student's name is John Smith. I'm going to try again. I'm going to click submit, and we see the student's name is Jane Doe. It's not particularly exciting, but at the same time, it's kind of cool that we wrote code that resulted in this functionality. We're going to come right back to this example to talk a little bit about how the code is working behind the scenes and how you can troubleshoot it and some common issues that you might encounter when you are writing code. See you next time.